Burnout. Merriam-Webster defines burnout as exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. Now, as a high school senior, I can say I've certainly experienced this. I've had countless homework assignments, application deadlines, extracurricular commitments, which led to me losing interest in several of them over a prolonged period of time due to the amount of stress I was under due to them. Now, I really never understood why this occurred. For instance, I was a big fan of singing. I was in my local choir, and over the years, I gradually lost interest in it and I quit. Unfortunately, I'm not the only one who has experienced this. Teens who tend to subject themselves to high amount of stress will lose sight of who they are at times and eventually focus on their stressors and cut everything else out of their lives. Putting a large amount of stress on a developing brain can lead to dire consequences such as poor academic performance, dropping out of school, and unfortunately, suicide. According to a 2018 study conducted by the Center for Disease Control and Protection, suicide is the leading cause of death for students ages 14 to 18, and nearly 1 in 5 teens seriously consider suicide. Numbers such as these should never be as near as what they are today. Today, I want to identify the several components which lead to individuals in high school experiencing burnout and what they can do to avoid being in this state of mind. I will be interviewing a few of my fellow classmates to see what their thoughts are on this subject matter. Obviously, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, I cannot go in person and speak to them, so we're using Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, it's a service that people use to talk with their friends, play games, or just hang out. So I'm going to be interviewing them there. Hopefully the audio is fine and everything, and we'll see what they have to say. Let's go.
I believe I had 4 tests in one day.
4 tests.
2 of which were AP, one of which was AP Chem. So, kind of overall. Yeah.
What specifically in those 4 tests made you stressed? Was like the amount of work? Was it not like pacing yourself? Like what specifically?
The amount that was there, because it was right before the end of the quarter, I believe, and a lot of teachers are piling on tests, so making time to learn each an individual one, like on a proper scale was hard to do, which can overwhelm people, and like you have to be there test day as well, or you don't get like test corrections for most of the classes, so yeah, kind of get overwhelmed.
Pretty much like most of the last 2 years, but I think junior spring was a pretty stressful time with schoolwork because like you have all your tests coming up with your SAT and all that external crap, but then you also have just like AP tests coming up at the same time, and those actually matter because you're in your junior year. And then you also have just like hard tests in classes like chemistry and stuff. But also, honestly, like this February and January was a lot of work that just piled up because, I don't know, I thought it'd be easier after winter, but then they just kept on throwing a lot more work, and it was just assignment due after assignment, and never really got into like a groove of doing them, so I always have to like struggle and do them really quickly at the last minute.
You bet. Junior year, first getting started with APs, I wasn't used to the workload. And yeah, I mean like AP Lang, those essays were pretty tough, especially the Mad Max one where we had to do so much for it.
Specifically in that Mad Max work made you stressed?
Yeah, because like we had to like read over a bunch of articles. I just didn't know what to do. or what I wanted to argue necessarily, and my evidence was pretty weak, and we had to like keep watching the movie to find things. It just, I don't know, I did not like it. I didn't enjoy it.
I mean, it's probably maybe when we had a lot of work, maybe like project work and stuff like that, especially in AP classes. That's when I had the most stress, I would say.
What specifically made you stress so much?
The amount of work, mainly.
Schoolwork is hard. Believe me, I know. Throughout the 4 years of my high school career, I've taken a multitude of challenging courses, which I had to put a great amount of effort toward. From what the 4 guys I interviewed said, schoolwork seems to be the leading cause of stress. They all also take very challenging courses, which accompany very hard classwork. They're faced with completing these grueling tasks with a lot of stress. Obviously, going into the class, they know how stressful it will be, but it's the way that their minds deal with it that affects them the most, not the schoolwork.
At some points, I would get too stressed, so I would just stop worrying about the other things. Sometimes I wouldn't do good in music, or the music classes, or like I wouldn't, try hard enough in scouts, and I just focused on one thing at a time.
Did you ever lose interest in any of those things? Or?
In scouts, I eventually started losing interest, and I stopped going to as many meetings, which ultimately led to me quitting. Yeah.
Do you think that like you would like to do scouts if you put more time into it?
Yeah, I would definitely like to do scouts if I put more time into it, and if I didn't have all that stress.
Really? No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say that like same amount of interest, but like it was always in the back of my head, like, oh crap, I gotta do this, don't I? Just looming.
Not really. I lost interest in the work. Like, I lost interest in like doing schoolwork. I'm like, I don't care why. So
yeah,
I never really let it affect like my other things.
Yeah.
What specifically?
By the end of chemistry, AP Chem, I lost interest in it completely. Sophomore year, I took chemistry, right, not AP, and I was actually enjoying it, and it was pretty fun for me. But when I went through AP, my love for chemistry kind of died. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, and although I went through the class and there was some interesting facts, I just lost interest in it.
Now, one thing I learned over the 18 years of my life is that the more effort you put into a work, the more you start to lose interest in it. In other words, burnout occurs. Now, what Mandar mentioned about despising the subject of chemistry after completing the AP course, and Stefan and Golby mentioning how they dislike doing their work in their respective classes, correlates with this phenomenon. The AP classes which they sign up for out of interest for the subject cause them to treat the subject as something that it is inherently not. Now, I'm not saying AP classes are the reason for this occurring. The AP classes have gone on to help people solidify their love for the subject. This ties into my next question.
Not really. I just needed to complete the work, and then it'll be done. Just completing it as like quickly as I could, that way, so like I wouldn't have to think about it any longer. So it wasn't really like a good job done with the work, but I did it, and I just kind of got rid of it.
I'm not a good person to answer that question because I don't really have too many. I let it just build up, but honestly, physical activity is probably the best one I can come up with that works for me. When I do try it, like if you just like go to work out, or if you're playing a sport like tennis, it really does help you out with your stress and stuff.
Well, before I didn't have the best one. I would just get overwhelmed and then end up not doing my work. I've learned that shouldn't be the case. I've learned how to just keep calm and focus on the prize and just work through it. And like for me to understand that like one night of studying isn't gonna change the result of the test. If I was truly prepared for it, then it would take me like a week, 2 weeks, and I would really know what I'm doing. If I really wasn't prepared for it, then one night's probably not gonna make a difference. So understanding like the mindset is probably the best part of how I cope. Like I just calm my nerves and say, I have to do this and organize my time.
Now, what really tends to affect people's stress levels is whether or not they have effective coping mechanisms or stress relievers. Personally, I like to meditate when faced with a flood of work that freaks me out. Other people like to write or play music. Whatever calms you down but still keeps you focused is a good coping mechanism. To my surprise, neither Mandar, Stevan, or Colby had stress relievers when faced with hard tasks. This led them to experiencing an even larger amount of stress and ultimately losing interest in what they were doing. Guys, we all need coping mechanisms. We aren't superhuman. It's simple as that. Our bodies can only take so much before hurting themselves. By having a good stress reliever, you eliminate any possibility of having breakdowns or being negatively affected by stress in any shape or form. Trust me, it works.
It's kind of just like when you're a kid, you just like you come up with this idea of what you want your future to be. So it feels like if you don't live up to it, mainly that's like the biggest outside influence is just like following up that dream that you came up for yourself. And so that was probably the biggest influence, but then also like this underlying influence within the school and people, because like you said, like people in the school, obviously they apparently think I'm really smart, and so you have to like kind of live up to that standard for like the rest of school. So that's like, and also another outside influence that like they're telling you have to do this, and then you have to fit that even if you already are, but then like you have to keep working to maintain it. And
I feel you there. School is a place where people try to be like other people, and it's kind of hard being in that kind of situation where compared to everyone around you.
oh yeah, that's the worst. It's like I don't mean to boast at all by saying this, but like when kids would say, "Oh look, I got a higher test grade than Stevan," it's like, dude, chill out. Like that's not like the end all be all or like the thing you need to like worry about, right?
Like college process. No, that's big for a lot of people. And that's just like a lot more extra work to do over the big load that's already there.
My parents have been really, really wonderful about not putting too much pressure on me because they understand that it's a very pressure environment, especially from where they came from, because they felt the pressure from their parents, especially because they were not in the most financially stable position, so their parents were really forcing them. But pressure that I think I might have put on myself was just competing, because I was seeing other kids do different things, and that am I doing the right thing? Am I really am I a failure? Am I doing something wrong with myself? And that just inherently looped. Or no, that was just the outside pressures. Like I was putting pressure on myself. I was just overthinking things that.
Now, it's not easy having people who expect great things from you. Personally, I have parents who want me to go to top school and study until I get a PhD. I also have other relatives who have accomplished things just as great, which sets the bar very, very high for me. According to their responses, it seems that they're constantly comparing themselves or being compared to their fellow classmates, which sets the bar and stakes very high for their success. Honestly, something like this shouldn't stress someone. People will always want the best from you, especially your parents. If you don't meet their goals, so what? They aren't you. I didn't get into my top 5 schools, but I'm still going to university where I know I'll be successful in. You should set goals for yourself that will make you happy and you successful in the future, not for anyone else.
Stress kind of, it can push you to focusing more on a certain thing, or like doing more with it. So like, I mean, I can't think of any examples for mine, but I can imagine that like just like inventions in general, like I don't know, the atom bomb, that it seems, or no, the moon race, that's a better example. Like,
Alright.
you know, both sides, Russia and us, were like under stress, and with that stress of wanting to be better than the other, they broke scientific ground.
You need that stress as a motivation. Which ties into
Can
my
be.
next question. Is it possible to live a stress-free life?
I mean, you can get rid of big stresses, but I'm pretty sure there are like mini stresses every day that you can't really avoid. I mean, you don't need to define those as stress, but no, I don't think there's I don't think that's possible.
I think stress is good for everything. Because I think if you don't have stress in your life, you're not gonna do anything. For instance, high schoolers, like senioritis, right? It's a very big thing because seniors don't feel the stress to do anything, and then they just leave all their work behind because they're already in college. Right? So if you don't have stress, you're not gonna do anything. But if you have over amount of stress, it can cause severe problems in your health because you're just not relaxed all the time. So you have to find the perfect balance of like enough stress but not too much stress, right? So you need to find that balance. I think everyone needs some amount of stress in their lives, especially like with work, because you're never gonna do the work if you don't have stress. Like for instance, right now the coronavirus, like a lot of people don't feel any stress, and a lot of people are getting out of their routines because they don't feel anything and they're just sitting on their couches all day. So I think stress is very important in life. Without stress, I don't think anyone will do any work.
Semancy. So last question. How can you live a stress-free life?
You can't. I don't think you can. I think you, unless like, yeah, I don't think you can. I think stress is required. Every part of life will have some amount of stress. You know, as a student, are you gonna get an A on the test? You know, as a person who works, a worker, are you gonna get the promotion? You get this done by the deadline. You know, as a parent, you're gonna worry about your child. Like you're always in some way or some form stressed.
Honestly, like, I feel like it's a motivating, when stress is motivating, I think that's a good thing. It keeps you like on your toes, and it makes sure that like you do get that ambition that you set out for. Otherwise, you just be like sleeping all day and not, if you're not stressed out about what might happen if you don't reach your goal, then what would be the motivation for you to set out and do it? So I think in that way, stress is essential and necessary. It's kind of like the backstage hand, that like puppet hand that controls everything. Like, you know, like Remy in like Ratatouille, he's like controlling the dude's hair and his hat. Stress is just like that little thing up there, but like it's doing a pretty important role.
So yeah, I agree too. I think stress is an amazing motivation for a lot of people, which ties into my next question. Can someone live a stress-free life?
They can live a toxic stress-free life. Like the thing they're free of is like an insane amount of stress and like the toxic stress of like competitiveness and stuff, and cutthroatness. But they can't live like a truly stressless life, because like you need stress to survive, right? Otherwise you just be like moping around all day.
Now, I know I've been giving the word stress a bad name so far, that's because stress is bad when it consumes you. Stress itself is something that keeps you motivated. It gives you that push that many people have difficulty doing. Without stress, the world's greatest accomplishments would never exist, and we wouldn't even be as intellectually evolved as we are today. So, returning to the central question of my investigation, what components lead to high school student experiencing burnout, and what can be done to resolve this issue? We saw people undergo difficult tasks which eventually caused them to lose interest in what they originally enjoyed doing. They also did not have any effective coping mechanisms to help them. Burnout is something that is very dangerous to enter. When in this state of mind, we lose ourselves and become mindless slaves to work. Do not let this happen to you. Know what you're faced with and do what you can handle. Thank you for watching.